Hello, everybody, and welcome to Subject to Interpretation, a podcast which brings us deep into the topics that matter to professional interpreters. And I'm your host, Maria Ceballos-Wallis. So today we're going to be discussing the importance of study groups for court interpreters. And joining us today are a few of my favorite people. 3 seasoned court interpreters with many years of experience altogether, who also happen to make up my study group since 2021. So I'm going to welcome Noemi Quirch, Genevieve Howe, and Jenny Griffin. I would like to add that our fourth musketeer, Irene Stark, was unable to join us, but she's here with us in spirit. So to get started, let's have each of you introduce yourselves. Tell me a little bit about where you work, the state you're in, the type of interpreting background you have. Let's start with Hano.
Thank you, Maria. Thanks for having us. I'm Genevieve Howe. I have been interpreting mostly full-time as a freelance interpreter in Massachusetts for the last 11 years. And I did some part-time interpreting prior to that in Michigan, New Hampshire, and Maine. And let's see, I got here by way of studying, living in Central America and the Caribbean, living with Spanish speakers, struggling, making a lot of errors, and always trying to learn. Did I answer the question?
Absolutely. And I know you are one of our more motivated students, or our motivated group members. So how about Noemi? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hola, my name is Noemi Quirch. I'm originally from Havana, Cuba. I work here in Jacksonville, Florida. That's where I live. I'm an in-house interpreter of the 4th Judiciary Circuit in Jacksonville. We cover Nassau County, Clay County, and Duval, and I mostly work in Duval. I am also a federal court interpreter for the Middle District, which covers Tampa, Orlando, and Jacksonville. And before that, I have been always an interpreter. That's why I study. I graduated a long time ago from the University of Havana. I did English language and literature, but my major was in translation and interpreting. Before that, I was studying French. So French was my second language, was not English. But then English became my second language, had a practice and always speaking in English, but French is, so that you know, my favorite language anyway. I have been an interpreter in conference, in immigration, in medicals, and almost everywhere. But during my work in Cuba, I used to work at Equipo de Servicios de Traductores e Intérpretes, and that's where I cover so many fields. It would take a whole day to tell you all about that, like from film festivals to cigar auctions to being in an operating room, interpreting for the doctors outside the operating room, me being inside the operating room together with the surgeons, doing very delicate pediatric surgeries. So I do have a lot of knowledge, and I love the work I do. I love helping people. So if you come by Jacksonville, you can find me on the 4th Circuit.
Thanks, Noemi. And somehow you just ended up, after all of that, world experience, you ended up in court interpreting. We'll talk about that more. What about Jenny? Tell us about yourselves. Now, Jenny and I share, her first name is Eugenia and my middle name is Eugenia. So we share a name in common. We're kind
Somos
of
tocayas, eso es.
Right, kindred souls.
Pleasure to be here with everyone. I'm also, like Noemi, a second language for me is French, and so English I had to rescue once I moved to the States instead of going to France. And so I'm a state certified interpreter by the National Center for State Courts. I work in North Carolina. So I'm a Southern girl, been here forever. And I've done the whole gamut of interpreting ever since I was actually a child, ranging from medical, corporate, some unqualifiable type of interpreting as well, that would not be classified into any kind of genre, and then eventually the judicial interpreting. And but I come to the language, particularly Spanish, from an academic level. I used to be in faculty at some of the local universities here in the South, and that was a long time ago. And eventually interpreting kind of came out of that. So I'm more of an academician, more of a grammarian, and that's where I approach language, both French, Spanish, and English as well. Social linguistics is very interesting to me. And gastronomy has been the one thing that has helped me hone the skills throughout life for many of the facets that I've had to use my language skills. So I'm primarily working right now at the state level for all levels of district and Superior Court in North Carolina, civil and criminal. And primarily it's quite a busy field. And so I don't have much of a time to do anything else. Translation has kind of been left behind a little bit because of the time issue. And used to do primarily federal work until, the state of North Carolina got really organized and became more streamlined in order to manage the interpreting profession. So here we are. And then I became, of course, through the studies, became connected with this wonderful group of people.
Well, talking about this wonderful group of people, let's, give us an idea. I'm going to start with Heno. Give our audience a little bit of background on the study group, how the study group kind of came to be and how it coalesced into what it exists, 3 years later almost?
Yeah, exactly. It's I continue to be impressed that we stayed together all this time. Well, we all took a class with Kati Kaufman in January. It started in January of 21, designed to help prepare participants to pass the federal oral exam. And we were, 15, 17 maybe students all together in the class. And as part of the class, we had the option to participate in study groups between class sessions. And Maria, you were one of the hosts or leaders of one of the study groups. And I'm not quite sure if the 5 of us were all in that group, but somehow the 5 of us ended up continuing on and on and on after that course ended around mid-February of 21. And there's more to say about how and why we stuck together, but that was where we originated.
And so, Jenny, I know that over time we have come up with a couple of different names for this group, and these may be a little Spanish-centric for people, but any name that we have come up has really based itself on the number 5. So what are some of our names that we've tried to call ourselves and never really settled on one, I don't think?
No, we have called each other, this group, anywhere from las sincrónicas to las sin corriente to anything that has to do with the word cinco, which is the number 5 in Spanish. And so sin corrientes, sincrónicas, sincópatas, simpáticas también, que no rima, pero bueno. So we've been always trying to come up with other play on words that we use the word cinco in Spanish. So
right, which of course means 5, and the latest one I came up with is the sin competentes, but that's kind of a weird one because it sounds good until you listen to it really well, and then it doesn't. It kind of negates the competency factor of it. Anyway.
Y si alguien se recuerda de alguna otra sugerencia, if anyone remembers any other name that we've come up with, please say it now. And those are the 2 that I can remember quickly.
So you've all been in study groups before, I think, in one way or another, perhaps in person, perhaps not. Noemi, tell us why a study group has been important for you in the last couple of years, and why you decided to join and stay in this particular one.
First of all, it is important that you can have your own materials and study yourself, but nothing compares to being in a group where people can tell you, no, you don't say it that way. And you were used to saying it so many times that you believe it was fine. And then you're like, oh my God, no, why? And then everybody jumps and they tell you all at the same time and you get confused. As, can you go one by one? Because we do that all the time. We talk over each other, but the most important thing is the support you get in the group, the practice of your skills. That some people talk faster, some people talk slower, and we go like, no, you're going too slow, you have to speed up. But you don't realize it until someone tells you you're going slow or you're going too fast, or you're like, in the way I speak Spanish, I always, speak too fast, and I go like, I miss words. I mumble things, and that is not nice. When you're an interpreter, you have to say it in a nice, neutral way. You should not be using your Cuban way of saying it. You have to be more neutral. So you learn that when you're in a study group. The feedback is priceless. The challenging of the legal terminology. You can be the most wonderful simultaneous conference interpreter, but the legal world is totally different. This is like, you have to study like if you're a lawyer. So this is like, we become, it's a career within a career, because I have done medical terms, because it's normal when you have a conference on orthopedics to learn all that, or cardiology. But we never, like most of the time, maybe contract law and all that. But when you go into specific of criminal law and all that, it's very specific. It has so many Latin terms and all that, nuisances that you don't have in other type of interpreting. So legal interpreting is so different that you need a good supporting study group, or you will never get there, believe me. Then the other thing is important, and I find this in this group, that we are all the same level. Some people do not have that level of interpreting, so they need more grammar, or they need more terminology, or they need more working in their skills. Our skills were more or less at the same level, so that is one of the things that I think that help us to be in this group for so long, besides being good friends.
Well, we became good friends all along the way, and we have been through lots of things together, personal accomplishments as well as personal losses, all of us throughout. And I think that, tell me if you think I'm right. Maybe Jenny or Heno can jump in. I think that one of the things that makes it possible for us to accept the feedback that the other group members are giving us in a really, really constructive way is that we have developed a trust, and we know that the other people have our best interest at heart. We know that there's no agenda. The agenda is really to bring everybody up, and we know that this is a safe space. I mean, we know so much about each other now that probably we would have never learned personally, but we don't let that interfere with how we treat each other professionally.
That is correct. In fact, one of the main gains of being in a study group like this has been the personal support, and not just professionally, but also in the personal level that we've derived from it. And it's been, to me at least, it's been absolutely wonderful, because I'm very isolated. I'm insular in the foothills of North Carolina, in the middle of nowhere. So to get together physically with other people to study or to do anything professional requires me to travel quite a distance, and I don't have the time, and sometimes I don't have the energy. I do travel quite a bit for the state, all over the 100 counties as needed, and so time and energy must be allocated to what is going to really be worth it. And meeting with a group of people that are consistent has been wonderful. What I have absolutely been impressed with has been, I think, the fact that we are all of one mind, probably from the same generation of not women, but interpreters, that we were trained to excel, to help each other out. And there are no ultimate motive that people have and other than help each other and get ourselves better in the profession. And that is not something that I have seen with a newer generation of interpreters coming up. There's a lot of cutthroat, there's a lot of envy, there's a lot of, more immature emotions that kind of interfere with the professional development of some of the new folks coming up. And so this has been an extremely safe space to meet, very consistent, and extremely supportive. And the acumen of information and knowledge that we have collectively, it is something like I've never seen before. The perseverance of the group has been absolutely outstanding, and I'm really surprised. I'm impressed. I'm kind of shocked, actually, because I thought this was no longer around many years ago when I finally stopped getting together or doing any kind of work in groups that was not, more streamlined into a class, so to speak.
Well, certainly, Zoom has made things easier for us. You're in North Carolina, Noemi's in Florida. I'm in Georgia. Yes. But I wanted to ask Hannah, because she has actually been in more than one study group at one time. So I believe you're still in your second study group. And so that study group must be different than this one. Or if you're not, you were in it for a long time. So tell me a little bit about the key characteristics that would keep you in any study group and it makes it effective for you to spend your time, because you're a very, very busy freelancer. I know that.
I am doing that and too many other things. Well, I think the key thing in a study group is having a mix of people who are from different native languages. To me, it's invaluable to be able to work with Spanish interpreters who speak Spanish as their first language. And hopefully I can also provide, some insight and tips here and there from my perspective as a native English speaker. And the other study group that I was in that actually began prior to this one, began around August, September 2020, kind of at the height of the pandemic when there wasn't enough work. And, I had too much time on my hands and I was bored and I needed to work my brain and I needed to hang on to the skills. A colleague in Massachusetts, Montserrat Zuckerman, asked me if I would study with her. And I was so delighted because she tapped into a desire that I'd had for a long time, but had just not been able to express, or, I had not been able to find someone to do this with. But with the onset of Zoom, it really worked. And I want to say one thing about that. The value of having just one other person in the study group is that we did a lot of consecutive. And so we would take turns, one of us would read maybe a page at a time from a consecutive script while the other one did the interpreting. And then we would pause and the reader would give the interpreter feedback and then we'd switch. And that was just a great way to practice consecutive, but also to get a lot of one-on-one individual feedback. And, certainly I have had that in this group of 5, but not with quite the same intensity as in the one-on-one. So in addition to having people of different native languages, if at all possible, a study group provides the discipline for me. If I just want to study or need to study, I'm terrible at carving out the time. I need to have dates on the calendar. I need to have people waiting for me. I need to have homework. I need to have material to prepare. And so working with other people makes all the difference to me in how I devote myself and how I learn. And as the others have said, we've been able to create a great deal of community, collegiality, and friendship. I've never met any of you in person, but yet you are my friends and a very important support group for me. The other thing that I think has been very important is having a goal. That we had a goal. We started in January, February 21, and I think the first time the federal oral exam was offered was August 22. Is that right? I don't think we had a chance to take it before that, but we had our hearts and minds set on that goal of all of us taking the exam, and several of us took it again. This March 23, but having that goal also really helps to keep a group together and having a leader. If I'm not going too far with the question that you asked, Maria, but having a leader who keeps the group going, helps set the dates, provides material, homework, the Zoom link, at the point that we set up our kind of a group shared Zoom account, that was very helpful and important. And I want to acknowledge you, Maria, as the leader who really helped keep us all together all this time.
Yes, I agree with that. In fact, La Jefa, as we call her, the boss
lady.
She was instrumental in, she was the glue that brought everyone together and motivated everyone. And if needed be, she would get that whip out, and just, get us running. And that was wonderful. I think we got into it, but we were very structured as well. We had the boss, and then I ended up being secretary, and so trying to stay in touch and sending the information and the prep work and the materials ahead of time and keeping track of things. And then the other folks for support. And it's been, absolutely mind-blowing to me anyway. I've never really seen a group of people that were so closely meshed, and some of us have met each other personally, but not everyone, and we keep hoping that we'll get to do that one day. It's just that we've had a few other personal hiccups that have kept us from actually coming together in one place.
Jenny, excuse me for omitting your invaluable role as secretary, but you did a lot that helped keep everyone together and informed and moving along.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I tell you, one of the things that that's been very paramount in this group has been also the sense of humor. Having quite a bit of laughter has been important. We laugh at ourselves. Sometimes we laugh at the things that are said or not said. And so, yes, in my role as secretary, I injected quite a bit of humor in some of the communications that I would send, quite a bit of probably sayings that are a little bit archaic in both languages, but nevertheless, it expands also our mind and thinking in a different context at the time. So it's been wonderful.
And if I may add something else, like it's not just studying and all of that, it's like having people you can trust whenever you have a question or whenever you had a difficult situation that happened in the courtroom. It's how would you do this? What is your strategy when this happened? When this, like someone next to you who is totally having this situation and you have to be there, how do you do it? It's not easy to explain that or to tell to other people you don't have that close relationship to. That is why you have these wonderful friends in your study group, so you can work it out. And
so we essentially have a built-in debrief group, don't we?
Right.
And that's something that's critically important. And I'm going to be doing a podcast later this season as well on vicarious trauma and on interpreter fatigue, in which we're going to talk about this. But it is so critical for interpreters to be able to talk to somebody who understands what they have been going through on that day, somebody who knows their character, who knows their temperament, and who, one, will listen, and then second, if asked, provide some, constructive feedback that is, well-meaning and not judgmental. And I think that a study group really has the potential of getting to that level. And
Yes.
I believe this one has.
I agree. In fact, I've always said the interpreting profession is lonely at the top because there are no support groups unless one has a psychologist or psychiatrist, which may be needed on occasion to discuss some things. We cannot possibly go through all of the things we interpret and all the hurt and things that are passed back and forth through the interpreter without really having it affect our own personal being. But there isn't any of that. Being able to discuss things like that and to be able to open up without, like Maria says, judgment, or without having people getting their nose out of joint, or perhaps gaslighting you, what have you, makes a big difference. We are resilient, and you have to be in this profession. And one of the things that I have enjoyed about this group is the resilience. No matter what, we keep on going. We are like the Energizer bunny. And that goes back to what I was saying earlier. I have found that the new generation of interpreters in any language is not the language group, it's just any language. They lack the personal fortitude, or they're just too fragile. They haven't toughened up, maybe because they're, most of them, young, but age doesn't have much to do with it. It's just there's an attitude, a mental attitude that needs to be acquired. And I believe we all have that mental attitude in this group, and the maturity, not only personal but professional, that makes all of this possible.
Well,
What
I
do
think
you
that's
think?
a really good point, Jenny. I'm gonna pick up on that, because I think that perhaps underlying what you're saying would be the idea that study groups need to be formed with people who are maybe not necessarily like-minded, but who can each contribute a piece of the puzzle, whether it be, and that they're kind of also still more or less on the same plane. So if we have a lot of technologically savvy younger people, they are more than likely going to be gravitating together to each other, and they're going to be gravitating to certain types of activities or certain things. Like, for example, they might be, taking notes on their tablet, and that might be kind of one of the things that they do and they share. So regardless of how generations behave or not, I think that as far as the study group is concerned, it's really important that if you're out there looking for a study group for yourself, that you try to find people that you can respect and also respectfully disagree with, but that people that will provide that different perspective than what you have, so that you will all continue to challenge each other. You think?
Amen.
Absolutely.
Well, I wanted to say one other thing about this, this jefa thing, the boss thing. As some of the viewers and listeners may have already heard in other podcasts, I do identify myself as ADHD. That is a thing for me. And so going back to, Heno's comment about how motivation plays a part in having people waiting for you or having people counting on you, the study group and helping to lead the study group, because it's not just a top-down approach, it's kind of a lateral approach where we discuss and then what we're going to do. And when I have prepared materials to do so, it is so as to keep me engaged in what we are doing. And so it's more than anything to work with my particular personality or my particular needs to, to surround myself with a structure so that I can then be responsible and then get the work done. So it's interesting. And everybody has, like, for example, one of our major, resource persons is Noemi. Noemi is always finding new and interesting resources for us to work with. And, information that she thinks, oh, we were talking about that a couple of weeks ago, right? I mean, you recently sent us something and I'm going, oh, wow, that's pretty cool,
Yes. One of the works I've also done, been doing, I literally haven't done much this year. It's like I've worked with the verbatim team in New York for translation, and their sources of language terminology is so immense and is so perfect that is like this world of knowledge that whenever I have chance to find things where I can send you or give to you guys, I'm more than happy to do that. Yes.
Now, I don't believe any of you have participated in in-person study groups before. Am I right? Other than classes, maybe?
I have been
That's right.
in person.
Oh, okay, good. Okay. So then let's talk a little bit about, both you and Heno have had some experience. Let's talk a little bit about, the pros and cons of, this in-person versus the Zoom type meeting. Obviously, the most obvious thing is that we can be in, 4 places at once and, and together.
5.
5 places at one, exactly. So talk a little bit about your experiences of in-person versus a remote kind of group. Who wants to start? Jenny can start.
In person is a bit, it's a commitment as well, but unless you have someone that's going to be there through thick and thin, it doesn't always work. There's always someone missing. There's always something that comes up. Or even if you all come together, sometimes the in-person dynamics may be different from one session to the next. So it's not as productive, I have found. And of course, now that I'm more remotely located, that is completely out of the question for me. It involves a lot of travel, a lot of time, finding a place that's neutral where we can meet, because not everyone has an office necessarily either in the home or rented space somewhere. So finding an appropriate place that will be undisturbed and quiet is a little difficult. Libraries, public libraries have been very good. Sometimes attorneys' offices have offered, their quarters for us to meet. But nevertheless, it's a lot. There's the time wasted in the travel, and sometimes not being able to really benefit from the meeting time itself. A lot of times people are fatigued to the core by the time they get there. And so it's just not the same. Or you have a resource, for example, in your car or in the office or somewhere else where you work, but you can't access it immediately if it's not electronically. So then you're always kind of running into that kind of hurdles. This is a lot more efficient, by all means.
Absolutely. I completely agree. The amount of time I would spend traveling is the amount of time we spend together, right?
Exactly.
I know.
Exactly.
Yeah, no, thank you. Well, before I answer that question, I just want to explain to the audience why you're calling me Heno.
Sorry.
Speaking of Spanish, Genevieve in Spanish translates usually, I think, to Genoveva. So people sometimes call me Genoveva, and they sometimes call me Heno for short, which is nice. Anyway,
thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So no, I actually have not done a study group in person. I've taken classes, some intensive Spanish, English, legal, interpreting classes, but I never did have a study group in person. The other, 2-person study group I had during the pandemic was by Zoom, and it's, the convenience just cannot be surpassed. The time-saving aspect, the sort of the reliability. People are much less likely to need to cancel for one reason or another when it's just turning on the computer from your home or maybe an office, if anyone is lucky enough to have an office. So no, I have not had that experience.
My 2 cents will be like when you're in person, you tend to talk about your personal life, your things, your problem, and then part of the study is not a study; it's like talking. And when you're in Zoom, you're more focused on what you have to study, and you just do what you have to do because that's the time that you have, and you go. When you're in person, you're having coffee, and that one thing leads to the other, and yeah.
Yeah,
That's
I
a
would
good
say that
point.
when we had our in-person study group, and most of the time it was held at my house, everybody brought something for lunch, and we'd take 45 minutes for lunch, sit out on the porch, and everyone, sometimes they'd bring something from Colombia, something from Venezuela, from a different country. And,
Right.
that, of course, was fun, and that cemented a different kind of relationship. But the one thing that I actually think is really, really key for people to know about study groups that are held online is that it makes it so much easier to share material, in the sense that if you wanted to do a simultaneous, or if you want to do a
Yes.
consecutive, all you have to do is play one recording, and you can be in your house, you mute yourself. We would have to go to separate parts of my house so that we couldn't hear each other when we were working on a simultaneous. This way we don't have to. We can record it. We can play our own recording to our colleagues, and we can hear it right there. So I think that the technology of it has just really made it so much more efficient for us.
Yes.
Yeah, good,
And also,
good points.
it also makes it easy for us sometimes if we travel. We can still access the links, and we can still participate even though we may be in another country. And that makes it wonderful. Whereas in person, if the physical body is not there, the class or the session cannot go on. And I think that
Both.
Yeah, when Noemi, where were you
Boat.
last week or 2 weeks ago?
Yeah, on the boat.
She was on the
There you
boat.
go.
We were not on the boat with her, unfortunately, but we will be on the boat. And Hannah was in the
Yeah.
mountains.
Yeah, and I have participated from New Hampshire as well as from Massachusetts. Yes.
I've participated from Puerto Rico and Atlanta.
That's right. But the nice thing, though, is that we've all been on the same boat, right?
Right.
Thank you, Jenny, for that. So it sounds like study groups can really provide a wealth of knowledge and support to new interpreters, advanced interpreters, veteran interpreters. What suggestions do you guys have in terms of finding a study group that suits you? Where could one go?
Yeah, I would say just ask. And I say that from my experience of being so pleased when my colleague asked me if I wanted to participate in a group. And she just hit the nail on the head, because it was something that I had been kind of imagining and wanting for years, but just had never had the courage to ask someone else, or never really felt that I found the right person. I didn't know Montserrat Zuckerman very well. We kind of knew each other, but not well. We weren't really friends when she, made this proposal to me to study together. But it was just absolutely perfect. And we became very close friends as a result. And she's a native Spanish speaker, and I'm not. And so that was the perfect formula for working together. But, for years prior, I'd had this desire and imagining of working with a native Spanish speaker to help each other, either to get tips on correcting the errors and horrors, as one might say in Spanish, that I make, and helping someone else improve their spoken English. But it just, it just didn't happen. So I would say, don't be shy, ask your colleagues. And, now that that working together by video is a good and productive option, working with someone across the state or across the country or across the globe is very feasible.
Yes. And also a very good field to find someone that is like-minded, who might be willing to do this, and who might be sharing the same professional aspirations is the classes that we take. We all have to do continuing ed classes at some point or another. And when people do make the effort to take a class, that means that they are probably above the rest that don't care to take a class. So then out of that group, sometimes there may be one or two or more that might be the perfect fit for a study group. So Geno is correct. You ask your colleagues and then also look into study groups to form a study group within the people you take classes with. That's how we found ourselves here, each other. In fact, I remember that Kathy had the pairs. She had us in pairs, I believe, and we were working. And that, I don't know that that really worked out very well. I think for us, for this group in particular, the five or the whole of the group has worked better than going one-on-one. That's my impression anyway.
I think we started out as about 8, and then slowly it got whittled down, and we got down to about three, and then someone else joined us. And so in the end, we ended up with 5 people, study as she goes. How about you, Noemi? What do you think?
I think it works like when you're like in that type of webinar, and then at the end they formed the study group. That's how I became part of this group. I was in another group with another webinar. Didn't last for too long, but what happened is like asking someone from like your colleagues to be in a team and to do that. It doesn't last long, and sometimes there is this professional jealousy that doesn't let you really be compatible. So I have found that people from not from this area, from other places, are more willing to change and work with you, that people are closer to you. I don't know if that's your case.
That's an interesting observation. I mean, I think it probably depends in general on people. It depends on the market as such, but it is probably true that we might be a little more forthcoming about where we work and where we live, and we might even share information, about rates or different things like that we might not share with somebody who's in our same city or who's in our same state. And so, that may be kind of an interesting point. That, in a group, I know more about what's happening in more states by virtue of this study group than I would if we were not all 5 of us in 5 different states.
Exactly. Yeah, I think we are very isolated in our profession, even within our own state, but opportunities to learn about how things work in other states are even more rare. And so this has really been a luxury. It's been just a very valuable resource to be able to get an insight into the lives of court interpreters in other states and how other states do things.
So what about community, ladies? How has this group and maybe the other study groups that you've been in contributed to your sense of community and collegiality, let's say?
I can say that the group has been instrumental to me in my personal life, not just with sense of community, but with a sense of being like a family. The group has given me that emotional support in like a really sad moments in my life, coping with many problems that I had, and the friendship I developed here pushed me to get up, study, keep going, do homework, and the whipping. And what do you do with this? Did you finish that? We're meeting in 5 minutes. Where are you? Sending a text. Yeah. Without that, I would have been like really dragging my feet, not doing anything, like falling in depression. But the group was really, 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 to me, so important, really so important to keep going. So I thank you all for that, always in my heart.
Thank you, Noemi.
We're here for you and we love you.
I just want to add to that I experienced something similar, fortunately not as severe loss as Noemi did during our study group, but the group has always just been wonderful about wanting to hear about the highs and lows in our lives, both personally and professionally, and being very supportive and understanding. So even though we were not having arepas in Maria's patio for 45 minutes, we did take time to talk to each other and see how we're doing, and share both personal and professional notes about what was going on in our lives. And that's been really important. And you know, on the professional side, when we took the exams and did not do as well as we wanted, that it was sometimes really hard, really crushing, but having the group support made all the difference in picking ourselves up and moving on and striving for the next goal. So I thank you all.
Yeah, it's been the accountability to each other has been wonderful. I always think of the effort that Maria, the boss, and the other ladies have put into preparing, including myself, preparing the material, being ready, allocating the time, and that deserves a lot of respect. How could I not be a part of it? How could I be not there to support them? How could I not personally, how could I not honor their effort by being there and appreciating the effort they're putting as well as my own effort? And that has been very important. It's because of the commitment everyone had. And like Heno said, we have been able to share some personal things. On occasion, we have gotten together on screen to celebrate, say, a birthday, someone's birthday for a short time with a nice beverage, or perhaps, you know, from wherever we are, we join in the celebration just to reach out and tell that person, we're here for you. Or if someone has had a milestone in their lives, or maybe needs a little pick-me-up, we'll also jump in and say, hey, you know, we've been able to tell each other a few truths, and we've been able to find ourselves a few truths about ourselves without, and it's been a very interesting growth process. All of those truths has been very, very good to hear or to tell ourselves, because it's actually made us better interpreters and better people. And I find that I belong with the five. It's like we told Heno one time when for some reason we didn't see her for a little bit, and I told her myself, you're not getting rid of us. We're not that easy to shake. It's like we're here to stay for the long haul. And that was just a joke, you know. I mean, I think she'd been working or something, but that is the mindset we've had. We're not going to leave people behind. Once we started, we're all in it, and we're going to go all the way to the finish line, whatever finish line each person may have. The goals may vary, like life does. We may divert. We may be, you know, may have different objectives, but the goal of going the distance together has not changed.
Absolutely. For our listeners, I'd like to add that amidst you know, all of this community and all of this I guess personal encounters that we have had, you know, there has been a structure, and the structure has been, you know, initially it was working on studying for the federal exam, and while we're studying for the federal exam, we broke it down initially into, you know, we had a whole note-taking, you know, 3 months almost. We worked on notes taking for a certain amount of time. Then we went on to consecutive. Then we went on to simultaneous and sight translations. And so we have actually had a plan, and we have been following that plan and altering it as needed. There have been times when some of us have needed to maybe focus a little bit on immigration terminology or procedures, and that also has been something that, you know, most of the group has kind of come along for the ride. wide. And so anytime anybody has a project that they want to share, that they want to move forward, they don't have to do it alone. So if any of you are in a study group and you want to maybe become a certified medical interpreter, then say, hey, you know, who's available? Who's interested in going through this material with me, even if you're not interested in becoming a medical interpreter? Because in legal, we're also going to find information, we're going to learn about things, or we're going to have to interpret things that that you know are in the medical realm, and we're going to benefit from it. So before we close this great session, and I really am so thrilled that you have been here with me, my dear friends and colleagues who I respect you so much. I'd just like to ask each of you to you know, to share one thing that you'd like to leave with other interpreters, new interpreters, future interpreters, and of course, you know, veteran interpreters. What would you like to leave them with that might prompt them to go and find and, you know, strike up their own study group, which may end up being, you know, not just a study group, but a group of friends for life?
I'll start. I think that to be a good court interpreter, you always have to keep learning, because if you're not, you're losing ground. It's such a complex skill. It requires such a breadth of knowledge, terminology, cerebral dexterity, that, I mean, sometimes I think of it as high-speed chess. And you have to stay in shape, or as Agustin de la Mora might say, you have to do your weightlifting. You have to push yourself beyond your comfort zone in order to grow, if not at least maintain your skills. So even if you don't have a goal, even if you're not trying to pass the federal oral exam or become an immigration interpreter or get certified as a medical interpreter, study, you know, keep on learning, which I think is one of Maria's slogans. It's good for the brain, it's good for the heart and soul, to keep your mind exercised, and to have the connections with community. We are social beings, and we need connections with our colleagues. We need the support. Thank you, Maria.
Thank you, Hannah.
I think I would like to add that there are two ways of going about your life. One is with the mainstream, and the other one is doing it your own way. And professionally, in this case, you almost have to follow your own way. I'll never forget many years ago, when I was indicating to an interpreter who's no longer in the profession that I was studying for some sort of test that we had. Her shock and her question was, why are you doing that? I mean, you already are a good interpreter. And I thought to myself, that is the mentality I don't want to keep, and I don't want to be. I want to strive and continue growing, and you have to. And so if you are going to be with the mainstream of interpreters, which are usually, you know, trying to get out of the assignment as quickly as possible, it doesn't matter what happened or whatever, no learning from it, that's one thing. But if you're going to really excel, you're going to have to apply yourself, and especially not to fall into that mentality. I always think of the words of Winston Churchill whenever towards the end of the war, Second World War II, he said, never give in, never, never, never give in. And that's exactly the way I feel. Like I said, our goals may be different. However, you don't give in, you keep on plowing ahead, because that's the only way to become a good interpreter and to excel in whatever field you're going to be practicing in.
My advice would be never be afraid to ask. We think that by being an interpreter for so many years, you know it better, you know everything. You don't. Young generations, as language has constant changes, have new phrases and fresh ways of saying things that you don't know. You haven't been able to be at their high school or anything. And if you don't have teenage children, you don't know what's going on. So you will have to ask younger generations how they say this or say that. younger interpreters will come with new phrases that I never thought I could say that this way. So don't be afraid to ask people around. Keep learning from people, because language is in constant change, and we will need to keep learning until we die.
Yes, and again, I was going to reiterate to what I said earlier, like Noemi and Heno are saying, the never giving comes in when I also remember another opportunity, more than once actually, when I asked other professionals that I was working with at the time in another city, let's get together and learn, or let's teach some newcomers some things. And everyone looked at me like I had two heads. And I thought that those are the things that I remember that have kind of boosted me to not become like that, to just reach for the stars, keep going, keep learning, and finding people that are going to be a good match. So don't give up. That's it. That's what it takes. Here we are.
Thank you so much, Jenny. Well, as I started this podcast earlier, I said that, you three and, our one missing counterpart, Irene, are, three of my favorite interpreters. And I could not think of anybody that I'd like to go into the trenches, into difficult interpreting situations with than you guys. So we hope to have the opportunity to work together at some point in the future, although that has not yet happened. But I will say that it has been an absolute pleasure having you here, sharing your insights on the importance of study groups and, for court interpreting, on how this group has been important for you, and how all of the effort that we have put in has actually blossomed in many, many unexpected ways. So
Yes.
Noemi Quirch, Genevieve Howe, Heno to us, and Eugenia Griffin, Jenny to us. Thank you so much for being here with us on Subject to Interpretation. Really appreciate your participation.
Thank you,
Thanks
Maria.
so much. Thank
Very
you.
welcome. Anytime.
Good to see you all.
Yes. Be well.
And to our listeners and viewers, thank you for joining us here on Subject to Interpretation. Don't forget that this year we are celebrating the 25th anniversary of the De la Mora Institute of Interpretation. And so don't forget to check out the other episodes wherever you get your podcast. Until next time, never stop learning.